Thank you, the Open Devin 3 team, for giving the opportunity. Is it, yeah? Okay. To share my work with you this morning. It's a pleasure and honor, and also a pressure too. Okay, all matter or material objects inevitably face the passing of time and its own decay, breakdown, and decomposition. Every element, whether human or non-human, is crossed by a material vulnerability and precarity that constitutes us and reminds us that if we endure and our social material worlds are sustained, it is thanks to the interdependencies that link us with others who are equally fragile and vulnerable. It's also the case for knowledge production. Any epistemic position is always a partial, incomplete, and situated position, never total nor from nowhere. This double ontological and epistemic precariousness and partiality has the effect of pushing us necessarily to connect with others, both to sustain ourselves and make life possible, but also to achieve better, richer, and more objective visions of the world. So far, I'm not revealing anything new or extraordinary. Every day, we all know and experience this kind of ordinary vulnerability and inevitable partiality. However, there is another type of breakdown, precariousness, or vulnerability that does not correspond to this ordinary inevitability. I refer to a kind of strategically provoked vulnerability that results in extraordinary damage, such as ecosocial damage in the form of waste and residues of former objects. In the case of electrical and electronic equipment, but it could also be extended to other objects, it's common to speak of planned and perceived obsolescence. The former, as you already know, refers to the deliberate planning of the end of a product's useful life by the manufacturer during its design, so that it becomes obsolete, useless, or dysfunctional. In other words, waste by artificial and premature means. The final goal is simple: to generate more profits for more frequent shopping and thus extend economic benefits for longer. The efficient and responsible use of resources, as well as the environmental pollution resulting from the waste and its treatment, are not so important. In this sense, part of the responsibility for many of the issues that are being addressed in this conference lies in design practice, especially industrial design, which operates at the service of a capitalist market economy. We then should not be surprised that Victor Papanek, a designer and educator, defined design as the most dangerous profession in the world by 1977, second only to publicists. But if publicists had no product to advertise, then perhaps design could be considered the most dangerous profession of all. Almost 50 years later, and amid a climate crisis resulting from what has been named the Anthropocene, or much better, Capitalocene, it seems urgent to review the role of design in this ecosocial damage at a planetary scale. If we trace the condition of possibility that led to this damage, we might point to modernity, that socio-historical moment and regime of thought where human autonomy and individuality are simultaneously ultimate aspiration and original agency. There, technoscientific knowledge operates as the engine for the industrial development brought about by capitalism, which tries to serve the economic progress based on the domination and exploitation of nature by human beings. This modern culture, with aspirations of civilization universality, is directly linked to engineering and design, as applied disciplines dedicated to the production of artifacts for the material order and arrangement of the world. As a consequence, that considers nature in the modern dichotomous logic, the non-human other and opposite to culture, will be turned into a resource to be used and exploited through technology to satisfy the well-being of a society whose progress demands a constant increase of productivity. And isn't this idea of progress one of the maximum horizons to which design and technology have aspired throughout their history? Or in other words, isn't design one of the practices and occupations that, to a greater extent, is the very materialization of progress? Then, returning to Papa Neck's complaint, we need to ask ourselves with a certain urgency how to defy this imperative of progress that drove design and so many other disciplines to become such a dangerous practice, or how to redefine the notion of progress to dissociate it from its human exceptionalism and its predatory and violent extractivism with such disastrous consequences. That is, how to make design a just and reparative creative practice, one that, assuming the fragility and vulnerability of any matter, as I pointed out at the beginning, can acknowledge, attend to, and take co-responsibility for them, as one who cultivates the ability to answer for one's own action. Fortunately, in the field of design, some voices have already arisen calling for it to be problematized, revised, and transformed towards critical post-human and ecological paradigms. For instance, there is talk of planet-centered design or more than human design, and of post-anthropocentric, cosmopolitical, or interspecies design. From the framework of sustainability, there is also talk of transition design and even calls for undesign and elimination design. Enzo Mancini suggests that, considering environmental limits, it is necessary to change from a culture of production to one of reproduction, and that designers should rather become caretakers of a garden of objects. Can you imagine it, a garden of objects? Or as Tonkin Wise suggests, would not designers as hunters, killers, eradicators, or less violently, designers as waste managers, cleaners, problem dissolvers, be an importantly productive contribution to the project of transitioning our societies to less staffed futures? Furthermore, exploring the relationship between design and repair, we find numerous works that consider the practice of repair as design itself, and also pay attention to the creative role of users. Some of these proposals are the so-called design after design, the design in use, the designs with other names, the designing after use and designing before use, or the aftermath of design. There is also talk of generative repair, and numerous authors suggest understanding repair as a creative form of care that negotiates and transforms the conditions under which design unfolds. In recent years, we are also witnessing the consolidation of the transdisciplinary field of discard studies or waste studies, which recognizes the everyday practices of maintenance and repair as creative and singular acts of care that enables the continuous sustaining of life and its most basic infrastructures through the study of waste. So my presentation is articulated by a very basic question. How could repair, and particularly the repair of objects about to become electronic waste, be an ally for design? What can design learn from repair? Or how could a repair design be? A design that prevents or minimizes material destruction and eco-social damage. The rationale for this question is quite simple. If repair and repair agents historically have been attending to and responding to the harms, failures, debris, and blind spots of design, then perhaps their position is conferring them an epistemic advantage, a privileged standpoint of view that may bring better, richer, and more complex insights about design practice, its outputs and consequences. This will help us to foresee and prevent future eco-social harms resulting from design. And maybe then designers, in the context of industry and the market, might be less dangerous as a professional species. Okay, to answer these questions, I will focus on a particular case, which is the repairing communities and restart parties organized by the Restarters Barcelona collective, of which I'm a member. This collective, which was founded in 2015, has since organized more than 80 restart parties and has supported the creation of repairing communities in districts of the city of Barcelona and in towns in Catalonia. Research parties are defined as free public events where volunteers with technical skills help participants to repair their own electrical and electronic appliances in a relaxed, playful, and community atmosphere. The system is very simple. When participants arrive with a broken appliance, a host volunteer asks them about the fault, and when it's their turn, they are referred to one of the volunteer repairers who tries to involve them as much as possible in the repair while explaining in a pedagogical way the steps to follow the fixing process. The results of the restart party, the brand, model, age, diagnosis, and the way the repair was achieved or not, are registered and documented in a database shared by groups of repairers from all over the world and called the Fixometer. But there is another point about these communities that I would like to highlight, which is their motto. We don't just repair our devices, but our relationship with them. So we could consider that what is at stake in the act of repairing is not only the most immediate material dimension, the object itself, but also the more than human sociality and the intimate bonds that are woven with our devices through the act of repair. In other words, the ethical dimension of our social material ecosystems. Even though restart parties contribute to repairing the intimate links with our devices, the ethical dimension is neither reflected nor acknowledged by the official metrics used at the European and national level to evaluate their impact. Such quantitative indicators are limited to figures on the number of kilograms of safe e-waste and its translation into kilograms of CO2 emitted with its treatment. By calculating the cost of new appliances that are avoided to be purchased, we can also estimate the economic impact of these initiatives. However, both data are extremely reductive to reflect the effects of repair. An ethnographic analysis of restart parties carried out with my fellow designer and philosopher Melissa Duque help us to highlight other effects derived from restart parties. In economic and ecological terms, the most obvious and well-known benefit, repair prevents the generation of waste and the emission of CO2, apart from savings for the domestic economy from not having to purchase new devices. As repairers say, the best appliance is the one that does not need to be made. So repair relies on the principle of sufficiency as a right and an obligation, which could be understood as a practice of care, maintenance, and efficiency of finite and limited resources. In epistemic terms, successful repair or not, the restart parties help to open the black boxes of our electronic devices and thus gain a better understanding of how they work and what they are made of. This helps to demystify the technology, to gain confidence and knowledge, or to lose the fear of supposed technical authority exercised by obstacles such as complicated locks and non-standard screws, or by threats such as losing the warranty if we tamper with the devices. And thus, with the help and support of volunteer repairers, initially passive users turn into active agents of their own technological universe, as a participant said. In terms of sociality and politics, by meeting and sharing knowledge for free, it contributes to repairing the social fabric and promoting learning communities with mutual help. Thus, in the face of individual isolation of feeling ignorant, the restart parties commune knowledge to collectivize responsibility and skills, and together resist the eco-social damage derived from the technological industry. Hence, what would have been impossible individually can be achieved collectively. At a pedagogical level, the restart parties give equal importance to learning as to successful repair. But the restart parties do not pretend to be a place for traditional individual training. Rather, they aim to share expertise to create temporary learning communities. To do this, volunteer repairers mobilize their curiosity, joy, perseverance, or passion for challenges, while they test hypotheses, use trial and error, or apply reverse engineering. They have to interpret what 10 people, designers and engineers, have done before, said one repairer. And finally, at the material and design level, Another of the most obvious effects of repair is that by opening the black boxes of design and altering their composition, it manages to extend the life of products and defy obsolescence and the agenda set by the market. But let's pause on this last point to explore in more detail how design could learn from repair, and particularly from the electrical and electronic appliance repair that happens at restart parties. Following the simple design technique of the 5 Ws and 1 H, which is also widely used in the field of communication, I will make a quick tour that will respond to the what, who, when, where, why, and how of the redesign that restart parties repair in practice could bring about. So, drawing on this particular experience, we ask, what would a repairing design that avoids keeping filling up our rubbish bins look like? What would be its 5 Ws and 1 H? Okay, so repair, through the opening, tampering with, and reassembling of the elements that compose technological devices, poses a new ontology where the products resulting from design shift from enclosed units or black boxes, consumer objects with a determined function and shape whose success depends on remaining static, closed, and fairly limited, to open and alterable systems whose success depends on being unboxed. Defying obstacles such as the limited warranties of the manufacturer, the non-standard screws, or the complicated locks that jeopardize the integrity of the device in the event of an attempt to open it, the act of repair serves to remind design that its products are never final, but rather prototypes, precarious, provisional, alterable, disputable, and never ultimate. Because even in the case of wishing to keep their original functionality, in most of cases, devices are opened, reconstructed, and reassembled with other parts and materials. And even if it fails to be repaired, its death will still have produced knowledge. This means to understand that the objects of repair in design operate rather as reflective objects of their own functioning. As they can be explored, questions can be asked, or hypotheses can be tested. In this way, the objects of repair design would be more akin to idea objects or objects to think about than objects of consumption. Yet, let's not forget another byproduct of this practice, the repair of the relationships that we establish with our devices and objects. That is, the social material links that build our daily ecosystems, becoming more resilient. If, as we already argued, the repairers, and in collaboration with users, occupy a privileged epistemic position by virtue of facing the harmful consequences of technological design, couldn't design benefit from a strong partnership with this type of agent? Because all of them, maintainers, repairers, and even users, are agents who, albeit not socially or economically recognized as either experts or innovators, have had to acquire essential experience and knowledge for sustaining life and our material cultures. So, while a repairer told us, I don't think we have much influence on designers or producers, let's think of the potential that the Fixometer might have on design repair practice. The Fixometer database could function as an informal and massive research and development tool to share knowledge with designers and industry on the faults attended to, so that they are conscious of the barriers we are facing when repairing a repair set. This is because if design, as any other epistemic practice, become democratized by widening and diversifying its agents, then its products will become better and stronger, as it happened for free software. Treating users as contributors is the most suitable way to improve the code and the most effective way to debug it, said Raymond, talking about open source software. Or also, with many eyes, all the bugs will pop out. So how to turn users and repairers into design allies? The repair takes place in the after time, when the product's life cycle based on its market value is finished. Sorry. Oops. Okay. In fact, anything beyond its use is not reflected in the stages of the cycle: conception and development, market introduction, growth, maturity, and decline. Even if restart parties last for 3 hours, the act of rebirth occurs in a long, apparently anodyne time that follows the novelty and celebratory moments of purchase, inauguration, or consumption. Since the repair confronts design and industry-derived damage, its time is that of the aftermath. But as repair succeeds in extending the life of objects, it also opens unexpected future times that were not considered at the moment of their creation. Challenging plan or perceived obsolescence, overcoming failure or breakage, means extending time, beating time, and hacking the market's agenda. Thus, if succeed to repair, it is possible to connect temporalities and spaces that were not destined to meet, because repair has access and modifies the decisions taken and implemented by designers in the past, because it takes place after and outside the economic life cycle, and because it extends the useful life of objects into a future time that was not foreseen either. Then, if the most conventional design looks for the creation of something new and innovative ex nihilo from a zero moment, repair, by the fact of starting from breakage and failures, is situated within a time that has already begun and must continue to keep the objects alive. Therefore, repair and even maintenance reminds us that the supposed order and stability of things is only a temporary and precarious achievement that demands huge and continued efforts. The time of repair and maintenance, too, is the journey, doing, trying. Okay. Restart parties takes place most of the time in community spaces such as self-managed social centers, civic centers, associative premises, and private or institutional spaces, but with free and open access. These spaces, therefore, mean that the reparative recreation of technological devices takes place elsewhere, away from conventional design, outside of design studios and production factories. Yet learning, I don't know what's happened. Yet learning about how things work also happens outside classrooms and design faculties. It takes place in informal community spaces among the bustle of participants peering over tables and watching others repair as they wait for their time. Repair, in turn, invokes other essential places, hardware and spare parts shops, and even the homes and storage rooms, where all equipment is accumulated and two broken things could be made into a new and functional one. This puts us on the trail of the role that could be played by spaces such as municipal recycling points, dedicated to the collection, classification, and disposal of special household waste, such as electronic waste. If these spaces were not just a one-way drop-off point for users' waste, but instead work as a space available for the use and reuse of discarded objects, they might be suppliers of spare parts and components that are discontinued or hard to obtain on the market. In contrast to the idea of innovation and progress that motivates the design, production and consumption of new products, repair looks for other kind of innovation and creativity, but based on a logic of post-consumption, sufficiency, and degrowth that seeks to optimize the available resources, including the possible waste. This defies the capitalist fiction of continual growth on an infinite planet, because restart parties strive to ensure that appliances remain functional, even if their functioning and properties are altered, and to avoid them to become e-waste. Therefore, one of the basic logics that support restart parties is environmental, because the aim to minimize or avoid the environmental impact resulting from the consumption and later disposal of new products. However, even though repair is usually triggered by ecological, affective, or economic reasons, we also identify other logics related to the knowledge and politics, to the capacity to transform the established system. For instance, one repairer said, "We have a rebellious point there. You are not going to tell me when I have to change my mobile or when something doesn't work. I'm also a bit angry about the lack of knowledge. If we don't know how things work, knowledge gives you a power as a consumer. It gives you power about your money. If you have a lot, if you have a little, well, it gives you more options. It gives you more freedom. And we don't take advantage of it. So if you understand and know, you are freer to decide, right? She added. This connects to the key question on political agency. Who has the right to inform and control, to create or recreate our material culture? So repair does not start from the void and newness, but from failure, error, harm, waste, or brokenness. And this changes everything, because the fear of experimenting and testing without warranty decreases or even disappears. The reparative gesture begins with an exploratory and attentive diagnosis, guided corporeally by symptoms and tangible signs like sounds, smells, appearances, textures, or other sensory stimuli. We try to identify the cause of the problem and by trial and error to solve it or to recreate something different. This implies to manipulating, adjusting, readjusting, and reassembling various elements, to thinking with the hands, until a not so clean nor perfect result is reached. This is why reparative responses cannot be established in advance. Their duration is unknown, and they are not easily normalized and standardized. They also often end up in dead ends or even worse, failures, sparks, and new mistakes. The aesthetics of repair do not match the polish and brightness of the new either. The methods activated during the repair of restart parties are varied. The testing of hypotheses, the trial and error, the sequential isolation of variables, up to identifying the damage spot, experimentation, tinkering, asking questions of other repairers, consulting, tutorials, hacking between two brown charges we made once, said a participant, or reverse engineering. A repairer said, I tried to understand which philosophy was applied by the design team that made it. From the activation of their curiosity, pleasure, determination, or passion for challenges, volunteer repairers share their expertise for free and in solidarity, forming momentary learning communities. One repairer said, instead of staying at home and saying, shit, let's see when we die out, we decided to meet and do something together. And this is super powerful. These particular ways of repairing make us think of this activity as a creative practice of inquiry, an imagination oriented to problem solving and the projection of artifacts into possible futures, facing creative, material, and relational challenges. And wouldn't this be a design process? Although there are a tendency to distinguish and oppose repair as an antithesis of design because of its supposedly reproductive and conservative nature, an attentive examination of the repairing gesture reveals it as a creative, situated, and singular act, far away from any standardization or normativity. Repair can also generate novelty in the opening of devices, in the diagnosis and the learning of the functioning, in the testing and revaluing of things, and in the contestation and widening of the material, epistemic, and disciplinary boundaries and closures of design. In restart parties, we recreate, reinterpret, and redesign our electrical and electronic devices, but also the interdependencies and linkages between the users and the devices. In repairing, we care for and sustain our objects so they can continue sustaining us. Thus, rather than user-centered design, restart parties would propose a reparative redesign, mundane, ecosystemic, and non-anthropocentric, planet-centered design. So finally, I would like to return to some of the questions that guided this presentation, because I'm sure that they can be answered in many other ways. What can electronic waste consider as a failing or harmful consequence of design teach us? How to practice a responsible design that faces its own waste and stays with the trouble, as Haraway says, or living on a damaged planet? Or how to repair design and its consequences? Okay, thank you.